Okay, strap in because today we're going deep, really deep into the dark heart of Unit 731.
Japan's secret biological and chemical warfare research unit during World War II.
You sent over a mountain of material for this one. Books, documents, even some animations, and honestly,
It's a story most people have never even heard.
it's true. The horrors of the Holocaust are sadly well known, but Unit 731, it's like this dark stain on history that for some reason never got the same attention. And it's terrifying, a reminder that humans are capable of, well, anything.
Right.
Especially when you mix unchecked ambition with science, that's a recipe for disaster.
No kidding. And at the center of this whole thing is Ishii Shiro.
Not just some run-of-the-mill mad scientist, by the way. Ishii was brilliant, but ruthless. Absolutely convinced that Japan could only survive if they weaponized, well, disease.
And you know, it's crazy. The 1925 Geneva Protocol, the one meant to ban bioweapons, it might have actually made Ishii even more obsessed.
Hold on, seriously. That doesn't make sense. That was supposed to stop this kind of thing.
You'd think so, right? But it seems like Ishii saw it as proof. Like everyone freaking out about bioweapons just proved how powerful they could be.
So him wanting to build these horrific weapons was validated because other people were trying to ban them?
Exactly. Talk about good intentions backfiring,
Yeah.
especially with someone as driven as Ishii.
It's a scary thought, to be honest. Like, the world trying to do the right thing, just push him further.
And all of this is happening while Japan itself is on edge. The Depression hit them hard. You had this surge in nationalism, militarism, everyone looking for someone to blame.
And that's where Manchuria comes into play, right? The invasion.
Ishii and those in power saw it as a strategic necessity.
Right. Manchuria had resources, a ton of land.
But also, no one watching too closely what Japan was doing over there.
So it became the perfect testing ground, not just for their military, but for Ishii's twisted experiments.
And that's where Zongma Fortress comes in. It was basically a trial run for what would become Unit 731.
From what I've read, it was part prison camp, part lab.
Hidden away in Manchuria, except instead of soldiers, it was full of prisoners. Captured enemy fighters, political prisoners, even people just suspected of being anti-Japanese.
God, that's chilling, just rounded up and...
Subjected to unimaginable horrors, and they called it research.
Ishii's team was experimenting with some seriously nasty stuff there, right? Plague, anthrax.
Anything they could get their hands on. Cholera, glanders. Ishii believed the plague was the key, though.
Because it spread so fast.
But it's brutal, highly infectious, deadly. Imagine the panic it could inflict.
The documents you sent describe some pretty horrific experiments, and these weren't just, like, blood tests.
One account from a medical assistant at Zongma will stay with me, I think. He described a prisoner with the plague being cut open, alive, no anesthetic or anything.
God.
He said the screams were unimaginable. That was everyday life at Zongma.
If that's everyday life, I can't even fathom the worst days. And wasn't this just the beginning for Ishii? Didn't he want something even bigger?
He always wanted more. As bad as Zongma was, it was also becoming a liability. Prisoners escaped sometimes. There were attempts to blow the place up. Ishii was terrified of being caught.
So he needed somewhere even more remote, more secure.
He managed to convince the Japanese government to give him just that. A blank check, essentially.
And that's where Unit 731 comes in.
Pingfang was different. Not just bigger, but on another level entirely.
From what I understand, it wasn't just a facility, it was practically its own city.
150 buildings, its own airfield, a power plant, all hidden away from the rest of the world.
How do you even keep something like that a secret?
That's what's mind-blowing about all this.
Yeah.
But at the heart of it were the prisoners. Thousands of them shipped to Pingfang to become Ishii's lab rats.
At least 3,000 people murdered there between 36 and 45, from what I've read, but honestly,
The real number is probably way higher.
we'll probably never know the true extent of it.
It's just horrifying.
Right.
And we have to talk about what they did to those people.
It's tough to even think about, what went on at Pingfang, but I think we have to.
Yeah, I get it. Trying to grasp the sheer cruelty is important. Even if it's awful, we can't look away.
Exactly. So, where to even begin?
Well, the documents mention frostbite experiments. Those stuck with me.
God, those were some of the worst. They'd expose prisoners to freezing temperatures.
We're talking like Sub-zero.
often naked, or they'd submerge their limbs in ice water.
I can't even imagine.
The researchers would just watch and record everything, how long it took for the frostbite to set in, how the body reacted.
It's awful. The pain those people must have felt.
It makes you question how anyone could do that to another person. And if that wasn't bad enough, there were the pressure chamber experiments.
What did those involve? I don't think I came across those in the materials you sent.
Essentially, they wanted to see how much pressure a human body could withstand before, well, breaking.
So they just crank up the pressure.
Or decrease it, actually. High A&D, low pressure. They'd lock prisoners in these chambers and just observe.
Observe what? What were they even looking for?
Organ rupture, embolisms, anything and everything. They wanted to find the point where a human being could no longer survive.
God, I read accounts of prisoners' eyes popping out from the pressure. Just horrific.
It's beyond inhumane. And then you have, well, this is where it gets even harder to stomach.
The forced pregnancies. We have to talk about that. It's one thing to experiment with diseases, but to do that to women.
It was systematic. They'd impregnate women, then infect them with things like syphilis.
Just to see what would happen.
They studied how the disease passed to the fetus, the effects on the pregnancy, everything.
Did any of the children survive?
I don't know. It's not in any of the material you sent me, and honestly,
Things are better left unknown.
It's just, the cruelty is unfathomable. And these were doctors, scientists doing this, people who were supposed to help others.
That's chilling. You'd think education, intelligence would be some kind of safeguard against this kind of evil, but
Clearly not.
Ishii was convinced he was in the right, that what he was doing would save Japan. That was his justification for everything.
Which brings us to the end of the war. When it became clear Japan was going to lose, what happened to Unit 731? Did they just pack up and leave?
Leave? No. Ishii ordered a full-scale cover-up. They gassed the remaining prisoners, blew up the buildings.
Right, trying to erase the evidence?
They even released infected animals into the countryside, hoping to spread disease and chaos.
My God. Even in defeat, they were still committing atrocities. Did any of them face trial? Was Ishii ever held accountable?
That's the thing. He made a deal with the Americans.
A deal? What kind of deal could you even make after all that?
He handed over his research, all the data from those horrific experiments.
In exchange?
Immunity. He walked free.
You're kidding. They let a monster like that go just for some data.
It was the start of the Cold War. The U.S., the Soviets, everyone was scrambling for any advantage they could get. And Ishii.
He knew he had something they wanted.
He gambled, and he won. He and a lot of his team, they went on to live normal lives. Doctors, professors, some even ended up in the Japanese government.
Knowing what they'd done, it's
sickening. And it took decades for the truth to come out, thanks to historians, journalists, the few survivors brave enough to speak up.
But it makes you wonder, what happened to all that data? The stuff Ishii traded for his freedom.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's chilling to think about.
So somewhere out there, that research is still existing.
It's a terrifying thought. And it makes you realize the things we're willing to do for power, for knowledge, it's a slippery slope.
This whole thing is like looking into a dark mirror. We're capable of such incredible things as humans, but also it's a lot to process.
It is, but it's important to remember, talking about this, learning from it, that's how we make sure it never happens again.
It's just, I don't know, knowing those experiments, that research might still be out there somewhere.
It's the dark side of scientific progress, isn't it? Even when the world says never again, that knowledge, it has a way of sticking around.
And the fact that the U.S. just took that deal makes you wonder what they thought they could do with it, Like it wouldn't come back to bite us all later.
Let's be real. The Cold War was a pressure cooker. No one was innocent. Everyone wanted an edge and ethics. Well, they get blurry when you're talking about potential world-ending weapons.
So Unit 731's real legacy isn't even the horrors they inflicted, but the horrors that their research might have enabled. That's messed up on a whole other level.
It is. And it's a reminder that history isn't clean. It's not simple. We want to think that good and evil are easy to spot, but sometimes the lines get really, really blurry.
This entire deep dive, it's just been heavy, to be honest. The experiments, the cover-up, the fact that those responsible basically got away with it.
It's important to face it, though. Not to dwell, but to learn. Acknowledging the darkness is how we make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, you're right. By talking about this, by making sure people remember Unit 731, we're honoring the victims in a way. And hopefully preventing more victims in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because forgetting, that's how it happens again. That's how we let those in power think they can get away with anything.
Well said. This has been one of the most disturbing deep dives we've ever done. Thank you for, well, guiding us through it all.
It's our duty to remember, even when it's hard. The victims deserve that much.
To everyone listening, thank you for sticking with us. It's tough to confront this part of human history, but it matters. Unit 731 is a reminder that we can never let our guard down. We have to stand up for what's right, challenge injustice wherever we see it, otherwise, well, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, and that's a future none of us want.